morning at Viewpoint, the program of personalities, politicians, and perspectives.
And mouth.
Well, we have a personality with us this morning. We got a perspective. By the way, I think most of us, if we're honest, Judith Kay and James and Alison, would agree. I hope we would all agree. For the most part, the fare they offer you on television today is pretty much pap and not much substance. I like to watch a lot of PBS stuff because it's a little more substance to that. Anyway, I happened to watch something last night on. Well, I went blank. But anyway,
well, Channel 12 or Channel 8?
It was Channel 12, and
there you go.
Gosh,
you
can't
mentioned
remember the
something
title
about Frontline.
Well, how much time do we have before we get off the air?
We can extend it. Just take your time.
No, seriously, it had to do it very, very seriously. They were in Afghanistan, and where in the world, how they got these pictures out of there, I don't really know. They were, the subject was about ISIS and how they capture these people and women and children in particular, and hold them for ransom and sell them as sex slaves and so forth. And the photography was just outstanding, and it was kind of a riveting program to watch. A little bit tough sometimes. They stoned a lady for infidelity. That was kind of masked out, but you could still know what was going on. It was a fascinating program, and it tells us how doggone lucky we are to live where we are.
Absolutely.
That was a gripping program to watch. I really enjoyed that. And another thing I thought was how the folks in China, the teenagers, are having a terrible problem with addiction to being online and playing games. They have computer centers, and they go to that and pay money, and pretty good money. And they get hooked, and it becomes it just consumes these kids, and it destroys their parental children relationship and so forth. And they have camps, like a work camp, that their parents get them assigned to get them to withdraw. It was amazing.
Well, we'll have another anonymous type thing then.
We don't need to worry, but
we've
Judy,
got all kinds of these addictions, and then we set up something that's going to save the people from their addiction to it. And so much of it is like state-sponsored, like the gambling here, and people find themselves in trouble. So they've got Gamblers Anonymous.
Well, one thing, Alison and Jim, I don't think we need to worry that our listeners are addicted to listening to Viewpoint each Wednesday morning, day 15. But we do have people that they talk with Judith and I when we're out on the streets and in the bars and so forth.
Drinking beer and chasing women.
And they talk to us about hearing us, but we can never get anybody to call in.
Yeah.
So the number here today, you might have a question for Alison. Oh my, Alison Gomez. I almost slept out Alison. Well, that's what an old person does. We didn't start with kudos.
Oh, please do.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm just constrained to give kudos to all of the folks in the community who are working so hard to bring us back the Lincoln Community Theater.
Yes.
And this weekend, starting Friday night, we're having what they call the Lincoln Community Theater Encore. And it's not play. We've had a lot of people ask about the plays. It is a wonderful program of a lot of songs, and we have some real artists in this community. I've talked about that before on this program. We have some really great folks who put a lot of hours in for practice, so kudos to those folks. Why don't we get on to business?
Okay, yeah, well, I have something too.
Oh, wait a minute. Let me talk to Jim about this.
Or two. I'll be real quick. Now, tonight, from 5 to 7:30, is the pork barbecue at First Presbyterian Church at 301 Pekin Street.
Good for you for
Be there. And secondly, let's bear in mind all the people in the central states, well, in the East Coast, all the people who are subject to bad weather patterns. The East Coast is getting it. We're getting inundated.
Oh, and all covered with water too?
Besides. And the West Coast needs the rain so desperately. I feel sorry for all the people.
Today's a perfect day. Perfect morning.
Yes, it is, and I say thank you, God.
Oh, I just had an inspiration. I had an epiphany, James. The name of that program was Frontline. Now let's get on to serious business.
Well, I tried to tell you. You said in the car on the way over here, you said Frontline, and I said Frontline. But
introduce our guest.
You'll never listen to me.
We have a local kid here who's making good.
Yes,
and doing some real good in the community. Get right on with it.
Yes, Alison Gomez. She is the head of the CIEDC.
It is now.
Spell that out, please.
Well, we've had a name change. It's now Community Action Partnership for Central Illinois. So it's CAPSL as
Pull
the
that
new
microphone
acronym.
a little closer to you, Allison. Pull that microphone just a little closer to you. Thank you.
There we go.
Well, you do so many good things
Yes,
for
she
so
does.
many different sectors of the population here and not only in Logan County.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to kind of give an overview of some of those programs. There have been cuts, as there must be in Illinois, because we've been a little frivolous with our money. And one that has held up, and I think is so important, is your preschool, your Head Start program.
Yes.
How many children do you serve?
We serve 308 children that are 3 to 5 years old and about another 90 that are birth to 3. So almost 400 children between the two programs.
But could you do one thing for us, Allison, as we start this conversation? Tell us Head Start. Tell us what that is.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people hear Head Start and they think preschool, and we definitely do that. We do the early childhood development education better than anyone. But the other part of Head Start I think that people miss is that it's not just child care, it is actually family care. So a big part of the Head Start programming is to not only take in the children and teach them the structure and the socialization that they need for those early childhood years, but we also take the families in and assign them a family service worker, which is real similar to a life coach. So at the first meeting, they sit down and do a family assessment. They talk to them about, what are the issues going on in your life? How can we help you become more self-sufficient? Is it transportation? Is it employment? And then we see through a life coaching session with them for the period that their children are enrolled in the Head Start program.
And is a big part of that dealing with and raising your children?
Absolutely. So there's, I think, and it's so funny that we were talking about that before, in the age of technology, even the 2-3-year-olds, I know I have a 3-year-old and he knows how to run the remote better than I do. So even with the young children, they get connected to technology and to TV more so than the parents. And part of the educational programming with the Head Start team is to take them in and show them how do they connect with their kids, how do they parent, how do they become better parents and engage not only with the children but also with the agencies and entities that they'll be forced to engage with in the future, like the school district and the health department and doctors and things like that.
Mm-hmm. That is so important. We just assume that we're all hardwired for this business of parenting, and obviously that's not true.
No.
And
it's a learned skill, there's no doubt about it.
Yeah, well, and you can't even really learn from your experiences because each child is a person unto themselves.
Absolutely.
And how lucky that there's some way that people can get help, because that must do away with this awful frustration that some feel, and then the child ends up being abused because the parents so frustrated they don't know what to do with the kid.
Yeah, the sad part is, of course, it's a social economic problem, but we have children being parents who are woefully inadequately prepared to be a parent because they're kids themselves.
Yeah. And well, it's a different world. My dad was one of 10 children. My mom was one of 4. And by his admission, they raised themselves in a lot of ways. With 10 kids, it's hard to parent like we do now. There was no helicopter parenting then. Yeah. But it was a different world then, too. The neighbors took care of the kids. If they were over at Bobby's house, and Bobby's mom fed the crew that day. And, and now we do have parents that are absent from the home because they're working. Most of the households are two-parent working homes or one-parent working homes where the kids are unsupervised. So they do that. And when you have that disconnect at that time, I know we're still a family that sits down and has dinner together every night, but I also know we're in the minority. Not a lot of folks do that. So at least that time of the day we get to reconnect to the kids, and that's something, even that basic principle is something that Head Start teaches. So in the school district, a lot of the other preschool programming, they do trays where it's served up even at the schools, but with Head Start, one of the principles that they teach to the kids at that very early age and also teach the parents is family style meal service. So just getting the children to sit down, to know how to conduct themselves at a dinner table, to know how to pour their milk and serve their food. And it sounds so basic and fundamental to what we know, but to them, a lot of them, that's foreign. They don't sit down at a table together. They sit at the TV or on the couch or, where on the run in the car a lot of times. So just those basic principles that bring families together and teach you in the moment parenting techniques, they teach that.
Well, I don't think anybody's going to argue the fact that there's tons of waste in social programs. By the same token, I don't think anybody argue the fact that's a program that impacts children who are in such need in many cases. Nobody can argue with that.
Mm-hmm. Well, the one item that Governor Rauner came out with and passed immediately was the education portion of the budget. So it is important. It's incredibly important. And Head Start is one of our few programs that didn't get scraped or cut in any way. We actually got a little bit of an increase, and I think that, generally speaking, people see the value of working with the kids at a very, very early age.
Yes.
How many are we working with here under your program now here, Alison?
So we have about 400 total children, but those 400 children stretch across our 6 counties for community action. But here in Logan County,
that's a lot of kids.
It is a lot of kids.
That matters.
It absolutely matters.
And since you're working with the parents, you will be affecting more than that 400 because those parents will probably have another child another day.
Yeah.
And so you're really reaching out to that child too. Another of your programs, two more of your programs I definitely want to hit are your transportation program. That was invaluable to our family when Buzz was on dialysis for 3.5 years. I tell you, I don't know what we would have done without them. That was just absolutely a gift to us.
A lifesaver for you.
Yes,
really.
it was. And you know that's true, Bill.
Yeah, I sure do.
And Bill's a mentor for you for Jobs for Life. So take it over.
Yeah. Well, you're right. The transportation program is one of those programs that we've struggled with, honestly, over the years. It's a very it's a difficult program to run because the funding is so scarce. But we've managed to do it. I think in 2012, when we partnered with the Logan County Board and the Mason County Board, it helped us substantially, moving from just a senior transportation program to a public transportation program that still offers donation-based fares for the seniors. But it's, excuse me, goodness, it is a very valuable program. We do roughly 20,000 transports each year here in Logan and Mason County. So an incredible amount of service. Our drivers, I think you said, are really, it is a calling for them. It is not just a job. They deal with roughly 9,000 critical medical appointments each year, and a lot of those medical appointments are situations where the person's riding need assistance, just getting from the home into the vehicles, from the vehicles into the hospital, and they do it with real zeal for what they do.
They act as a friend,
absolutely,
to their passenger.
Absolutely, and they truly do become friends. I think.
Well, they do. They see them often enough.
Yeah, absolutely.
Your responsibility, your sphere of responsibility, all 6 counties, Alison?
All 6
that
counties.
Seems to me like a pretty good load on your plate. You must feel like a juggler at times trying to balance everything. I want to get to the nutrition part of the Head Start program. if nothing else, in some families, that is a lifesaver in and of itself.
Absolutely.
Could you speak to that just a minute?
Yeah, so the nutrition portion of Head Start, from the meal service style all the way to what we deliver in terms of nutrition, our Head Start programs comply with the USDA CACFP program, which is a whole lot of letters to say that we provide nutritious and well-balanced meals to all the children that come through the door. So in the morning session, they get breakfast and they get lunch, and we're sure that they're getting their whole grains and their fruits and their veggies and their meats and their meat alternatives at every meal. They're properly portioned to deal with some of the obesity issues that we have with the children in that age group. And, you know, they're great products. And again, you know, the cost of delivering those kind of meals are cost prohibitive for a lot of the families that we deal with. So while we don't know what happens at dinner when they're in a morning session, we do know that they're getting a well-balanced breakfast and lunch every day.
And in order to learn and to grow, you have to have that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I just saw a study the other day that said if you have diets that are high in fat and sugar, that you're less prone to learn. You can't retain information as quickly. So they definitely need that, right? At 3 and 5.
To whom do you have to report, Mrs. Gomez?
I have an amazing governing board. I know we talked about it a little bit before the show, but we have a governing board of 18 members represented by all 6 of the counties that we're located in, and that governing board has really been a lifesaver for this agency. And I don't know that they or our fiscal office or our staff really gets enough credit. I mean, I like to do the juggling, but yeah, I couldn't do it without them. They're amazing.
Well, you mentioned off air that you knew, your board knew that our incoming governor would, of necessity, and I emphasize that, make some changes.
Absolutely.
And so you didn't have a knee-jerk reaction. You began to plan, or your board began to plan.
Absolutely.
You didn't know exactly what was going to happen, but you knew that there would be some changes to have to be made.
Absolutely.
So it seemed to me like there was some good thinking.
Yeah, and honestly, there were a lot. I know that on July 1st, we got a message from our association, which is our professional body, that of our 40 community action agencies, and I don't know how many satellite offices, but we had 100 offices close on July the 1st.
Wow.
And up to 1,500 people lost their jobs or were laid off on that day because, you know, I don't know whether there was a failure to plan or just people were generally caught off guard. But we were not one of those agencies. We, all in all, lost one part-time staff member, and we're able to keep all of our offices and satellite offices open, some with some restricted hours, but open, you know, and employ our staff. But a lot of that was because the board gave me the latitude to make changes early on, and in that moment, those changes didn't necessarily make sense. They make sense now, but back then it wasn't a hard sell. You know, they were trusting, they were educated. They were willing to move and make the changes as necessary. And I think what I love about Community Action, I love about this board, is that they really are tied to the initial mission of Community Action in teaching self-sufficiency and holding oneself personally accountable, understanding self-discipline, and knowing that there's sacrifice with that it's not an instant victory. And they knew that back in November. We had a board meeting in January where I proposed some pretty significant changes to the organizational structure. They signed off on it, and starting in January, we started incrementally making those changes so that July 1st wasn't, you know, as horrible as it could have been.
Well, because you acted instead of reacting.
Yeah.
Speaking of being accountable, Mrs. Busby, we have sponsors to whom we should be accountable. And Mr. Ash will now introduce them, and then we'll get right back to Viewpoint. And right back live in the studios of WLCN, up here on Lazy Road, 96.3 on your FM dial. The number to call Alison Gomez to talk about Head Start or have any questions is 648-5510. Alison, as we made our commercial break, we were talking about accountability and so forth. There has to be, by necessity, a lot of daily and certainly weekly and monthly planning. You have to sit down with your groups and or individuals and kind of lay out the groundwork.
Yeah.
Give us a typical day as you start on Monday morning.
Wow. Well, Mondays I'm usually a firefighter. Lots happens over the weekends usually. So those I guess are typical for a Monday for everyone. But yeah, we have 6 different programs that are active. So we have the early Head Start program, but we also have senior nutrition. We have senior and public transportation. We have CSBG, and then we've got our kitchen.
CSBG.
So CSBG is the Community Services Block Grant, and that Community Services Block Grant is really the foundation for what makes community action. It was the birth of community action. CSBG was one of those programs that LBJ introduced in his 1964 speech, famously known in the community action world. But CSBG is really about teaching a man to fish. I mean, that is the principal, fundamental goal of Community Services Block Grant, is that we bring people in who are living in poverty and try to provide them with the tools and the education, the guidance to get out of poverty. So you mentioned earlier the Jobs for Life program. That's one of the CSBG classes that we offer, and there's really a life cycle to that. So we spent a lot of time over the last year talking about what do we see, what is our vision for taking people out of poverty, because we were serving about 4,000 households, up to 9,000 people a year. And when I said, but how many of those people, when we're looking at those 9,000 people, when our principal goal is to help people escape poverty, how many of those people can we look back and say, we helped that one escape poverty? And we weren't able to do that. So it really caused us to reevaluate the direction of the agency and how we wanted to tackle that. And out of that conversation and that strategic planning really came the birth of the new CSBG life cycle. So that the CSBG life cycle addresses things that we felt were essential in order to help people escape poverty. And the first class in that CSBG life cycle is the Jobs for Life class. And the thing that I love about the Jobs for Life class is it doesn't just talk about how do you write a resume, how do you dress properly for an interview, how do you deal with personal roadblocks. It really deals with not just how do you teach a man to fish, but how do you teach a man why it's important that they fish. And that's a totally different principle, because the battlefield of poverty has very much changed since 1964. So there's a whole life cycle that they go through. They do Jobs for Life, they do financial literacy, they do housing counseling, and then it loops back into providing services to your community, volunteer work.
And when did this metamorphosis take place?
It's been a slow evolution. So that was part of the organizational change structure that we did in January, and we've been incrementally introducing those programs. The program that Mr. Gossett so kindly participated in as a mentor and a champion was our pilot program. We had 3 students in that program, but in the fall we'll have about 10 to 15 students in each one of those classes, and they'll be offered across all 6 counties.
Just to decide, Alison, I'd just like to comment that your Katie Slidham did a fine job in conducting those sessions. And the 3 folks that they hung in there, and you know, a little graduation ceremony you had when it was all said and done, complete with caps and gowns, I might add, which was a neat little touch. It made an impact on those 3 folks.
Absolutely. And I think that graduation ceremony was at your church, thanks to Trinity Episcopal. We appreciate the support there. But the church was packed. I mean, for 3 students who'd gone through an 8-week program to teach them about things like, God's greater plan for you. How do you knock down your own roadblocks? How do you keep yourself from falling into the same pits over and over again? And things like resume writing and mock interviews and things like that. For those 3 students that we had, the church was packed. packed. We had a full house
Yeah, it was
with
refreshing.
friends and relatives there to support them and say, this is probably a big accomplishment in their lives, and we want to be there to support you. So I know Katie had to make several pizza runs on that day. So
I haven't seen that many in church since I was a kid. I was about ready to pass the plate.
packed house.
What age were these students?
We had students that were from early 20s to mid 50s.
Yes.
So it spanned the age
They struggled
range.
too. They worked at it.
They did, but that's part of it, is to teach them that you must struggle.
Yes.
It's not that you want to avoid the struggle to be successful. To be successful, you must struggle. That's part of the deal.
Well, unfortunately, and it's just a statement of fact, we all know this, that poverty kind of begets poverty.
Mm-hmm.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy unless there's something to push or an incentive.
Right.
But if they just kind of wallow around down there, that's where it's going to stay.
Mm-hmm.
So this is just an effort, another effort.
Absolutely.
Again, Judith and I have talked about this before, and Lord knows I'm conservative enough. There's so much waste in government. But when you have a direct impact on people like this, you can endorse it.
Now, I think we're
enthusiastic
kindred
about it.
spirits here, because and we talk about, in fact, we had Andy Hake from the Chamber of Commerce group in a couple of weeks ago, and I go to a lot of these roundtable discussions. I'm sure you attend the roundtable discussions where we talk about how do we stimulate economic development, how do we improve our communities, and we all diagnose the same problems. Everybody has the same diagnosis for what the problems is, but our solutions don't speak to the problems, and I think that's one of the things that really makes this Jobs for Life program and the CSBG life cycle in total really unique is, the issue a lot of times is a lack of a good sphere of influence. As you said, poverty begets poverty. A lot of times it's generational, and when you're living in poverty, your sphere of influence is also a group of people that is living in poverty. And when everybody has the same lenses on, it's difficult to see anything other than this is the way it's always going to be. So the Jobs for Life class, one of the key components of that Jobs for Life class is we bring in hiring managers, business owners, faith-based organizations, people that wouldn't normally be in those folks' lives, people that normally wouldn't be in their sphere of influence, and then somebody who would never know a Bill Gossett or a Judy Busby gets to come in and have someone breathe some wisdom into their life where they wouldn't have it in any other way. And I think that's not about the money. That's not about more funding. That's about more time. And when I spoke with Ms. Hake, that was one of the things I said. If you're going out and asking our community for something, stop asking them for money. Ask them for their time, because their time matters. That one-on-one relationship, that mentoring cycle matters. It matters.
And you have to give people a hand up, not a hand out.
Yes.
And I see pockets of that bit of wisdom cropping up all over. I think we're kind of coming to the point where we're changing our direction a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we can have Katie come and teach the classes, and we've got the funding to pay her salary, and she's thankful for that, I know.
Of course.
She needs help. I know, Bill, even with 3 students in there, each one of those students, you could have spent the 2 hours with each one of those students to talk to them about what does a budget really mean? When you're budgeting, is it smart to stop and grab a slice of pizza at Casey's with a $2 20-ounce Coke, or is it smarter to, head to Walmart or hit Aldi so that you can buy, half a week's worth of groceries for what you would have spent on a run to the gas station? So it's just those kind of conversations. And again, if they don't have, my parents or a Bill or a Judy that's speaking to them all the time about those choices, they're not hearing it, and that's our obligation at Community Action, and I hope our mentors come in with the same attitude, that it's really about speaking wisdom into their lives, to give them information and support, and to tell them, you matter enough that I'm here. I'm giving of my time and my resources because your life matters, and I'm here to support you.
Well, it's just a given that not all folks are as lucky as the rest of us who have had good parenting.
Absolutely.
And of course, that's the genesis of it all, is good parenting. And unfortunately, that doesn't take place in lots of places, lots of homes. And this is a direction. Now, for instance, in this Jobs for Life, it was difficult for those 3 students at first to express themselves. And I watched that kind of develop and blossom, and when it was all said and done, it was a remarkable difference from day one until the graduation day in their self-confidence, and that in and of itself is a big thing.
Absolutely.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Absolutely. We talk about it too when I go in. We all sort of have our own personal elevator speech. When I go in, somebody says, "Tell me about you." I know who I am. I know that I'm a mom. I know that I'm a wife. I know that I'm the executive director at Community Action. I know that I've got a history here with great parents, and I went to Lincoln High School. I have a lot to talk about. I have an identity that is clear to me. When those folks come to us, if you say, "Give me, just a 30-second elevator speech about yourself," they're stumped. They don't have an identity, and that's part of having a job. And I think Jobs for Life addresses that in such great ways. They say that having a job is part of your identity. Having a job is part of your self-awareness. Having a job is part of you being confident. It's part of you having integrity. There's integrity that comes with having a gainfully employment life. And they talk about that consistently, and we get to the point, that's one of the exercises in the program, is you need to get to the point over the course of the 8-week programming where you can give a 1-minute elevator speech. So if you go in to pick up an application at Macy's and they say, "Well, tell me a little bit about yourself before you take the application," they have something to say. And when they came in, a lot of those elevator speeches sounded like, "Well, I really don't have anything to say," or "I'm kind of a loser," or it's awful to hear their own interpretation of life and what they are.
No sense of self-worth.
That's right. And just that 8-week course with people loving on them, and twice a week coming in and telling them it matters. What you do, what you say, every choice you make, it matters. And we're here because you matter enough to us for us to be here.
And what matters is for them to understand that there are people out there who do care.
Yeah, who want them to succeed.
One of my mantras is don't go through life with a catcher's mitt on both hands. Throw something back.
Right.
Well, and I think everybody, wherever they are, ought to remember to throw something back, however small it may be.
Yeah.
And it's important to be a part of, whether it's Lincoln, Illinois, or Chicago, Illinois, put something back into the community.
Absolutely.
Now, your next session of Jobs for Life will be for about 10 people, you say. Will you still be concentrating on Logan County, or will you be branching out into the others?
Right. So the life cycle consists of the Jobs for Life class, a class that's on financial literacy, Financial Peace University, and then a housing counseling program. All 3 of those courses are taught in all 6 of our counties.
Okay. So now, like Bill's friend, whom he mentored.
Yes.
Will that person be back for a phase 2?
They are. They're right now registered in our Financial Peace University class, the financial literacy course. So right now they're working on budgets and understanding how to reduce debt. They're learning things like, here's one of the things that I think people miss is a lot of them do receive public services still, so they receive food stamps. And one of the strange things that we had in our last focus group, somebody asked, does anyone teach them how to even manage the budget of food stamps? Does anyone, when they go to get their food stamps or their link card, sit them down to say, "Hey, here's how you manage the card"? The answer obviously is no. And that's some of the stuff that we talk to them about. Even right now, while you're in this position, we're working to get you out of this position so you're not doing it. But the principles are the same. How do I manage the budget? How do I make good choices? How do I shop for best prices? Where do I shop? How do I decide whether or not to run through McDonald's or, make a pit stop at Walmart instead and grab a $5 pizza? So they talk to them even about managing the budgets that they have right now, and talk to them about when you're making more money, what do you do with that? What does retirement planning look like? A lot of these folks have not even heard the word 401k. They don't even know what that is. So we talk to them about things like annuities and savings account and banking principles, and it's a new world for them.
Well, but it gives them a sense of knowledge is power.
Absolutely.
And it would give them a sense of power to be able to think about those things. I know when I was young, That was
a long time ago.
It was a long time ago, back when the dinosaurs lived behind my neighbor Roz. I had no idea I'd be this age. It just never occurred to me. I don't know how I thought I was going to escape it. But it's important to know, and it's important to think about, well, what am I going to do about that? You can work for 75 years, but there comes a time when you're going to retire.
Yeah.
You just can't do it anymore.
Right?
Yeah. Well, that's so wonderful. Now that phase 3 is going to be
housing counseling. So a lot of them are first-time home buyers, and we talk to them about home ownership and what that means, and not just the tail end of the financial literacy talks about budgeting. So how do you budget for owning a home? Even if you don't own a home, how do you budget for renting your apartment? But that last piece is home ownership. So if you're gainfully employed, you know how to manage your money, and you buy a home, how do you manage that home once you get into a home?
My daughter is the president of Habitat for Humanity here.
Yeah.
And, that's a hand up, not a handout program. Another pocket of that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just
Alison, just being Golden County Fair Queen does not give you enough credentials, as nice as they were. Seriously, to have a job like this, the impact it does on people, and particularly children, there's a lot of training. Give us a quick background on how you got into this profession.
Wow. God has got a sense of humor. That's all I have to say. Every time I made a pit stop or a career move, I thought, how in the world did I get here? I've got so many certifications, and I'm a real estate agent and a certified tax preparer and an event planner, but all of those things miraculously weave into this job. So I started at Lincoln College. I sort of cut my teeth there, being an admissions counselor, learning about enrollment management, and then I moved into fundraising at Lincoln College for a couple of years and did their annual fundraising program. And then after that, I worked for Midwest Technical Institute, helped launch and plant a campus for MTI down in northern Mississippi. And shortly thereafter, kind of in tandem with that, we had a large immigrant population in Memphis that had migrated. Some were coming for the plants. Toyota had a plant, moved them. A lot of new immigrants didn't speak English, so I started an assimilation school where I taught English as a second language and just general assimilation practices, and then came up and worked for State Farm for a few years doing operational efficiency work, and then landed right here. So it's a long career, but every single one of those pieces ties into what I do now.
Well, isn't that the berries, really?
It really is.
Yeah.
It really is.
That is so great.
Mm-hmm.
The future. How long, as you plan ahead in your advisory group planning, do you lay out a 5-year plan, or is that what you work with?
We do. In fact, we're going into a new strategic
budgetary problems. That's very difficult.
We have a new strategic planning session coming up in August. So we did our last strategic plan in 2012. We brushed that off and realized that, like a lot of them, when budget times change, there are things in it that became obsolete over the course of time. So we're going to go back to the drawing board here in August, and we've got a 4-day working session at the lovely Allerton Park in Monticello, and hopefully we'll come out with something that smells better than what we've got right now.
You just have to think outside the box all the time, don't you?
Really.
And move from this program to an emphasis on that program, and on and on. Well, it's a good thing you've got the background you have, kiddo.
Did you have a closing quote that you wanted to, or comments that you wanted to make, Mrs. Gomez?
No, I do want to give a shout out to the Logan County Board. We've been working with sort of an obsolete contract with them for our public transportation program for the last couple of months, and we just went through a pretty rigorous remake of the contractual agreement. And honestly, I think they anticipated, and I anticipated it being more adversarial, and it just wasn't. I had the pleasure of working with their executive committee last night and mapping out an agreement, and it went great. You know, I think there was a real sense of partnership, a real sense of camaraderie, a recognition that it was mutually beneficial for both of our bodies, but also a great service that neither one of us were willing to compromise for the communities that we serve. So it's been a great experience. We have a county board meeting next Tuesday, so we're hoping to get some support there. I don't anticipate any problems with going through with the new agreement, but if you've got nothing to do on a Tuesday night, then come out to the county board meeting and show your support for that new contract.
Well, we appreciate very much young lady from Lincoln that we're proud of here, Alison Brewster Gomez, doing a very important job with our Central Illinois partnership, Central Community Action, I should say. We always try to close with a quote of some sort, and there were a lot of quotes on Head Start. I mean, lots of them. And I'll just cut to the chase on one that Senator Christopher Dodd said, and it really says the essence of Head Start program. Our children are our greatest resource, and the Head Start grants help them reach their full potential. Without Head Start, a lot of kids are just going to wander around. So thank you, Alison, very much.
Thank you.